The biggest game that we have in week number 2 is number 13 Michigan, led by Sharon Moore, and we know what Sharon Moore is. Being able to coach at his alma mater. Well, his alma mater just happens to be ranked as well, number 21 Oklahoma, according to our Redshirt Sports Tops 25. That is all taking place at Gaylord Family Oklahoma Memorial Stadium in what arguably has the highest stakes of week number 2, with this being your only top 25 game that we have in the week 2 slate. And that's going to be kicking off at 7:30 Eastern over on ABC. Michigan, listen, they seem to have signs of life, at least on the offensive side of the ball, because imagine this, they might actually be able to get a forward pass going. Can you imagine that? Imagine Bryce Underwood, coming in here in his very first game, and, it's not necessarily the most eye-popping spots, like stats, against a New Mexico team that is expected to be towards the very bottom of the Mountain West, right? But he did throw for over 250 yards. He took care of the football. He didn't turn it over. Looks like someone that, could actually create that into impact similar to what Trevor Lawrence did for the Clemson Tigers very early into his college career. That kind of impact is something that Bryce Underwood could very well have for Michigan in 2025. Now, for that being said, while the offense seems to actually have a little bit of pulse and still be able to have a little bit more balance because of the fact that they're able to pass the ball a little bit more effectively, at least that's what the early returns show. What I will say is I still thought this team looked a little shaky in week number 1. I mean, I understand that it was a 17-point win against New Mexico, but, at the same time, like, you're projected to post a blow these guys out of the water. I'm talking about like a 30 to 35 to like 40-point victory. And, New Mexico, they hung around a little bit longer than what was expected. So, this is a team that's looking a little shaky, maybe on the defensive side of the ball, which makes me wonder, even with an improved aerial attack, and in a game in which this is really genuinely a big opportunity for both teams to notch a top 25 win to help bolster that potential playoff resume. How are they going to counter against Oklahoma, who, we obviously know about John Mateer, one of the more talked about quarterbacks over the course of the entire offseason, bringing his offensive coordinator in Ben Arbuckle. And he seems, at least what we saw, and I know it's just against Illinois State, but he does present as a legitimate game changer for the Oklahoma Sooners. We're talking about a guy that, hey, he did amass over 3,800 yards last season between passing and running the ball, but it was a matter of, can he translate that to higher level competition? And while this specific game will probably provide more answers, because again, they did go up against Illinois State, he looked sharp, and he even looked sharp in a game where Oklahoma had a really difficult time running the ball. I'm talking about a team that, averaged less than 3.5 yards per carry against an FCS program. And to be honest, it's probably an FCS program that probably isn't going to make the FCS playoffs level, just to kind of level set how good that actual team is. So definitely some concerns there as well. Both teams really having questions, to be honest. One on maybe a little bit more on the defensive side of the ball, while as trying to figure out how legit the Michigan offense is actually going to be. While for Oklahoma, it's really, can John Mateer get a little bit of help from his running game? We figured like the defense is always going to be at least at a pretty good level with Brent Venables coaching the team, being more of a defensive-minded head coach, but not being able to run the ball against FCS program. I understand it's just one game, but I mean that is a little bit of a cause of concern. I mean, we got to call a spade there, right? But hey, let's go ahead, take a quick look in the model. What does the model tell us as of right now? And it's going to be really interesting. So what we have for the model in this present moment, right about now, is that comparing the model with what our internal metrics say in terms of what FanDuel is reporting, is actually pretty similar. So on FanDuel right now, Oklahoma is listed as a 5.5 point favorite, while our internal power rating metrics, it's right about on the money. We're talking about Oklahoma coming in as a 5 point favorite. So, not much difference between what we're reporting and what FanDuel is reporting as well. Most of that is, baking in home field advantage because Oklahoma obviously is at home. But even if you don't bake in home field advantage, let's say this game is on a neutral site field, you're still looking at Oklahoma being really about a 1.5 point favorite. So, right now, we're saying that Oklahoma not only gets the benefit of a home field advantage, but is probably a slightly better team than Michigan at this time. Now, with that said, Michigan can absolutely pull this upset off if they use really the Illinois State playbook, really limit Oklahoma on the ground and force those obvious passing downs, see if John Mateer can continue to make big plays, right? Or at least, make them one dimensional in the sense of, hey, John Mateer may still be effective, but you know what's coming, and you may do a little bit of better job of stopping him or at least slowing him down. Because I'm not sure if he's the type of quarterback that you could absolutely box up, but maybe it's a passing game that you could slow down. With that being said, at the same time, though, Bryce Underwood, you have to understand, he's playing in his second career college football game. It's not like he's making his second start. He's playing it's his second game ever on a college football sideline. And playing in such a tough environment, and because of how Brent Venables is such a gifted defensive mind, I can see this being one of these games where it really comes down to the turnover margin. And that Bryce Underwood, makes, one too many mistakes for Oklahoma to be able to pull this out. So what I will do is I'm going to agree with the model in the sense of I do believe the Michigan Wolverines, they do end up covering. I think they do cover the 5.5 that's currently on FanDuel, but I'm not going to go so far as to give Michigan the win outright, even though they are the more highly ranked team right now on our Redshirt Sports Top 25. I do think we do end up seeing, I guess, technically an upset, but not according to FanDuel or our internal power rating metrics. I think because of that home field advantage, and I think Brent Venables does find a way to confuse Bryce Underwood enough. I think Oklahoma does end up winning this out and making this, let's say it's like a 27-23 affair in favor of the Oklahoma Sooners, really cementing themselves as a top 25 team that should be taken a little bit more seriously in the playoff discussion moving forward.